Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and we have officially reached 10,000 YouTube subscribers. Thank you guys so much for making this happen. And to celebrate, we have a special guest. Now, there was a tiny bit of confusion to start. I thought he was joining us right at 4. He thought it was 4 Central. That's where he's at. It's all good. This kind of stuff happens. So Arian Foster, our special guest, I said this on the Majority Report today, will be with us in 40-ish minutes, 50 minutes? Yes! So around 5 p.m. Eastern, he will be with us. So we're still getting the Arian Foster interview that I promised on the Majority Report. But yes, couldn't believe it. But when and I'll talk about this with him a bit, I got a DM from him about the Tim Pool debate that I did, where he seemed to appreciate that. So got us to chatting a little bit. I'm a huge fan of Arian Foster as a player. Like, not just, you know, the fact that he is one of the best running backs I've ever seen play football, or that most people have, right? I'd be less excited if Derrick Henry was coming on the show, for example. I loved Arian Foster independently, just as how he played football. So we will be chatting with him in particular about the state of the running back market. But before we get to that, we have some news items to get to. First of all, though, push us past 10,000 subscribers. We reached this goal. Keep it going. Subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Hello to my co-host and my buddy and my producer, Bradley Alsop.
Good afternoon. 10K subs.
Woo!
Yeah.
So now Bradley doesn't have to do anything extreme because we were able to book such a great guest.
Yeah. I was gonna drink a whole bottle of Jameson whiskey or something.
Yeah, maybe we'll save that for 20,000.
Chug it. Yeah, like Emma said, be like Arian Foster during his career in in short and goal situations and push us past the pile of 10,000 subscribers.
Well done. So we will, looking forward to that interview. We'll get to him in a bit. Let's just start, though, with the big news, I think, out of the NFL, if you would like, Bradley, because, since our last episode, has there been a development, a few very dramatic kind of catty, I want to say, moments in the NFL in terms of both Sean Payton and Jim Irsay publicly being dicks for no reason. One of them's a little bit more warranted. The other is insane. But let's start with the billionaire asshole in this situation, Jim Irsay. Owner of the Indianapolis Colts, Jim Irsay, you know, the guy who inherited the team from his father, I believe. Did he inherit the team from his father? I don't want to. Let's double check that. He at least inherited his wealth. Right? That's his father, Robert Irsay, built a fortune and of heating and air conditioning companies, and that's why Jim Irsay has all his money.
And he owned the Baltimore/Indianapolis Colts franchise from 1972 until he died in 1997.
Okay, so this guy was born about a centimeter from home plate and thinks that he hit a home run. And he decided that a few days ago, that's not the tweet, it's the screenshot that I sent you here. This is what he said a few days ago. He tweeted, NFL running back situation. We have negotiated a CBA that took years of effort and hard work and compromise and good faith by both sides. The CBA is the collective bargaining agreement between the NFL Players Union and the NFL. To say now that a specific player category wants another negotiation after the fact is inappropriate. Some agents are selling bad faith. So he tries to backfill it there by blaming it on the agents. Completely needless tweet, pours total gasoline on the fire when the running back position is feeling completely devalued, rightly so, because they're the drivers of views from casuals that play fantasy football, and they're putting their bodies in immense harm's way and not getting compensated for it. I laugh at that too because during the pandemic, they altered the CBA. They altered it in order to get football going. Because of the lost revenue, there was a renegotiation. So it can be done, but only when it benefits the billionaires. Only when it benefits fail sons like Jim Irsay. That's when it can be renegotiated. But when the CBA should maybe be tweaked to help a certain class of player actually get fair compensation for the value that they provide. Oh, no, 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 no. That was a good faith negotiation. Come on. Come on. So that's what happened. Then Jonathan Taylor's actual agent responded saying, bad faith is not paying your best player. He responded to that tweet. A few days after that, Irsay then admits, like basically publicly, that they hadn't planned on offering Taylor an extension. So, and they hadn't done so yet. Which just is like, yeah, Jonathan Taylor, just go out there and put your body on the line. We don't really care about paying you fairly. We don't even have plans right now to pay you fairly in the future. Jonathan Taylor, understandably pissed off, goes and meets with Jim Irsay. They meet for an hour. Jonathan Taylor leaves, and he requests a trade. Because, of course, why do you want to play for a guy who literally is saying, I don't really care about your feelings about your compensation. You just got to suck it up. Because we negotiated the CBA, which we tweaked a few years ago. But for the stuff that has to do with me paying you, me billionaire paying you for your fair value, that is what is immutable and can't be changed. And then after this breaks, the freak, Jim Irsay, is just like sending messages to reporters left and right. This is what James Boyd, who's a beat reporter for the Colts, I believe. Yeah, for The Athletic. He had this quote. If I die tonight and Jonathan Taylor is out of the league, no one's going to miss us. This is what Irsay's saying. The league goes on. We know that. The National Football League rolls on. It doesn't matter who comes and who goes, and it's a privilege to be a part of it. I like want to scream reading that quote. Do not take that down. If you die tonight, I don't know if Jim Irsay has children or what his succession plan is. But if he dies tonight, one of his kids or whoever he handpicks is going to inherit the team because he owns in this ecosystem the team, like the means of production, basically. This is kind of clumsy Marxist analysis, but he is the billionaire. He is the person in charge of the team employing these players, the 92 guys and the 53 guys that end up on the roster. Jonathan Taylor is just one of those people. He is a worker. Irsay is a billionaire. And Irsay is pretending as if there is some sort of analogy in their two situations. That's not it. That's lunacy. And the fact that he doesn't understand those very power dynamics, that if he were to die, I also don't know how his death is comparable to Jonathan Taylor being out of the league. Like, if you were to die, then you don't have any need to make more money. Jonathan Taylor being out of the league tomorrow, he would still need to make more money. That's the difference, dumbass.
I think, like, this is a broader point, but, like, truly, like, the advent of the internet and Twitter for guys like Jim Irsay, like, just, like, loopy, kind of inappropriate, not to slander the guy, but most likely probably inebriated boomers who have basically the like psyche of a guy watching his favorite team on TV, but he happens to be the guy who also owns the team. So he can be like, Taylor's a bum. All right, let me tweet that. And then basically change the contract terms for this guy, or like the trade value, or like the course of this guy's career, just because he's literally the owner of the team. It's really astonishing stuff. Also, You gave a lot of This is not to discredit what you said because it's absolutely right. But you're almost reading the tea leaves of what something that for me was like nigh incomprehensible language. Like I don't even know what kind of point he's trying to make. I don't know what the difference from.
He's trying to say like enjoy the time while you're here.
He's literally like, you know what, JT, ride the wave. Okay?
Like what Jonathan Taylor is making. He's making a little bit more than he had previously in base salary this year. But Jim Irsay is a collector of guitars.
Oh, yes, he loves guitars.
He has Elvis's guitars, George Harrison, Paul McCartney. Just one of those is probably worth what Jonathan Taylor is going to make this year.
Yeah, listen, Jim Irsay.
Why don't you give him John Lennon's guitar?
Life goes on. If let's say I took your guitar. Let's say if I took one of your nice John Lennon guitars. My life will go on, yours will go on, we'll both die at some point. It's a privilege to be a part of me stealing from you.
Right. It is.
You should be thanking me for the experience.
Thanking you for being a part of this.
Of my petty larceny of yours, taking your Bob Marley guitar or whatever, John Lennon guitar from you. It's like, seemingly only his assets matter. His money matters, but not a guy he can legally subjugate, basically.
I mean, I'm reading this collection. He owns the Smells Like Teen Spirit Nirvana guitar, which makes my heart hurt.
Yeah.
He owns Muhammad Ali's Rumble in the Jungle Championship belt. He acquired the saddle used by Secretariat when he won the Triple Crown in the 70s. This guy's pretending like they're all just buddies and they're in the same exact financial situation. The power dynamics could not be more different. Jonathan Taylor has a finite period of time to capitalize on his talents. 6, 7 years. And you're saying, well, we're going to take another year of your career without fairly compensating you, and you're going to get wear and tear on your body, and you're going to break down. That's going to affect your ability to capitalize on your talents in the future. And I'm pretending like we have the same power dynamics at play here. I do not blame Jonathan Taylor whatsoever for asking for a trade. I would probably do the same thing in his situation. But also, let's be clear here. Irsay's now saying, under no circumstances will I trade him. So you're saying he's so talented and important to your team that you will not trade him. Okay? And at the same time, you're saying that you will not compensate him.
Right.
That is disgusting. You're admitting that he's so valuable to your franchise that you won't trade him, but you won't give him the commensurate value in his contract. Like, Irsay's fun in some ways because he's a moron
to make fun of,
and he says what is on his mind. But really, that is vile.
It's pernicious.
That's disgusting. And not a way to treat a worker who's supposedly a part of the Colts family.
Yeah, and there's that aspect of it where like that idea of like flattening a relationship between an owner and a player or like a worker and a boss is like a familial dynamic. One flattens the pernicious aspects of certain familial dynamics to begin with.
True.
Like as if families can't, family members can't abuse one another. So there's that aspect of it, but also it also goes to show you that Irsay is almost tacitly acknowledging that like your value to us is on the gridiron, in the X's and O's, on the score sheet, and how you affect people's fantasy football teams. But your value does not. We won't reflect that value in the bottom line.
Right.
Like we have. Jim Irsay has the luxury to basically say, I am divorcing the value of what you mean to us based on how you play and what you provide for us from what you are actually going to earn from that value. Like he is somehow able, because of his position as an owner, he can cleave that. Mm-hmm. Where a lot of times that's usually not how those things work. When it's a factual or definitional inequity when the value of labor does not comport to the financial value that is extracted from that labor.
Right. And the reality for Jonathan Taylor is that they aren't going to trade him. Like,
no, God no.
But you know what I also saw? I mean, and who knows? A reporter was reporting this, didn't say what their source was. It sounds like the source is frickin', sloshed Irsay, saying that they're considering putting him on the non-football injury list.
Yes, right.
Which
That was
would
right.
forfeit his entire salary in retaliation for him speaking out and saying, "I want to be compensated fairly." And he
tweeted to that effect, saying, "There, like you should find better sources because I'm not experiencing that injury."
Yeah,
like,
they were
injured.
saying, "Oh, it's because he has a back issue," and Taylor's like, "No, I don't." So what that is just retaliating against your worker for speaking up. And then Irsay's like, no one treats their players better than the Indianapolis Colts. I got to be honest. There's a lot of bad billionaires in the NFL. I think 50% of them would never consider doing what Irsay's doing in this situation.
Well, I agree.
This is bottom of the barrel garbage.
I think for some people, when you're not like Jerry Jones, for example, you don't want to be like, I think there is some benefit for certain billionaire owners to confer a sense of anonymity so they aren't the source of this ire from fans, players, and employees alike. So I think the reason why some of these guys constantly step in shit isn't necessarily, I think, because they want to. It's because they're dumb. Well, and like I think Irsay's stupid. Like, I think he's.
They're doing that's happening right now, kind of with the Bills because the Bills are maybe trying to take away Nyheim Hines's salary and claw back maybe even a bonus that he got
because he got injured in
with the Colts.
He got injured. He had a freak accident while he was like having on summer vacation.
He was sitting stationary on a jet ski, and someone lost control of their jet ski and rammed into his leg and like shattered his.
And that has something to do with his employment. Like that's like his. I mean, like he should be punished for that. Like
but the Pagulas are like hands off. To your point, right? They're gonna let that play out. But they're the ones calling the shots in that situation. But that's another gross thing to do. But there are organizations. The Steelers wouldn't be doing this to their well. I mean, I was thinking about Le'Veon Bell, but that was the second.
But I would
time
say
I
don't know. Him. Like I don't know. For example, like I don't know if like
the Giants would.
I don't know if the Giants. I don't think the Giants would necessarily. I don't think the 49ers necessarily would. I mean, the Kaepernick situation was very, very bad. That was more of like the whole league did that. The whole fucking league blackballed.
Yes.
And at least Chip Kelly at some point stood up for Colin Kaepernick, but the Ravens probably wouldn't necessarily do that. Like I think it's hard to pick, honestly, but I do think I guess all it is to say is it's hard to pick. I would say specific teams, but it's also like I do think some teams would be like, you know what, this isn't worth the PR headache.
Exactly, and again, you guys just drafted a quarterback 4th overall. You want to take away out of spite, your best offensive player on the team right now, which is going to be a huge help to. And I didn't even mention this. Zach Moss just broke his arm, who was the next running back up on their depth chart.
So they're already lacking depth at the position.
Do what the Giants did. Sweeten the pot for Jonathan Taylor, or open up negotiations on the contract extension. It is really cruel to a player to be like, you're in a contract year, you have no security after this year, but you've got to go and run as hard as you can as guys want to rip your head off and are hitting you as hard as humanly possible. Just go out there and play with reckless abandon. Even though you could ruin your body irrevocably and never get the payday that you are supposed to get the second time for your second contract, just play without even worrying about that. That's what they're requiring of Jonathan Taylor. It is dehumanizing. So I don't even know what there's more to say about that, except that Jim Irsay is a dumbass. He's not just a dumbass, he's a dumbass. Dumb to the second power. Okay?
But call in.
Yeah.
But call into the show.
But call in, please. But Jim, we'd love to hear from you. You're apparently telling everybody how you feel.
I hope he's like I search my name guy outside the tags.
Someone needs to take the SIM card out of Jim Irsay's phone.
I bet that. I wonder if someone's like that is on payroll. Maybe we just forgot.
Yeah. Well, it seems like he's not getting paid enough.
You had
like
one fucking job. Colts intern, Jeff Saturday's kid. God damn it.
In other NFL drama news, Sean Payton decided oh, I don't really care about hurting anybody's feelings, and I'm going to go on the record with Jarrett Bell of USA Today and say exactly how I feel.
This was astonishing
about
actually.
Nathaniel Hackett.
Because usually, we'll get to the particulars of what he said, but like usually I feel like even if you do feel this way, NFL coaches and players, I feel maybe not players. At the very least, what I'm saying is, if you feel something like this as a coach or player, I feel like if you were gonna say it, it would be anonymous. And even saying it though, because a lot of people, there's a lot of this, speaking of the whole family thing, and there's so much about like the NFL is a brotherhood, the coaching is a brotherhood. Only 32 people have this job, so like there's some sort of like kinship amongst the coaches, amongst people who have like had similar experiences of like the highs and lows, and like nope, Payton was like fuck all that.
Well, Payton is in the rare category of coach still active that has won the Super Bowl. I mean, there's as a head coach, we're talking Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin,
Mike McCarthy,
Mike McCarthy, amazingly so.
Lest you forget,
Sean Payton, Sean McVay, and then who else?
You say John Harbaugh. You say
John Harbaugh. I didn't say. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like 8 guys basically. I think
very, very few in the league right now. So Sean Payton's in a rare category, and he's super well respected around the league, which is why I appreciate the honesty. In all honesty, it's fun and it's content. It was mean.
Well, yeah, but of course, like for our purposes, it's amazing that he said it. But absolutely, just in the context of like the league writ large, it's like wow, like he basically just it's like if Zach Taylor, for example, after like was it Hugh Jackson before? Oh no, Leslie after Marvin Williams.
Yeah.
After he came in and was just like, man, this place is a shithole.
Right.
This place fucking sucks. I can't believe it.
And he rips on the GM who's still there in these quotes.
Oh my god. The fact that he also like sort of referenced George Payton, it's like, my man, George Payton sort of hired you, kind of.
Well, he's kind of been sidelined. But
yeah, Greg Penner, the kind of the Walton conduit, sort of was like, I am in charge now. But still, it's like that guy's still there. He's still on the payroll.
So I will read the quotes to you now. Talking about Nathaniel Hackett, Payton says, "It might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. There's 20 dirty hands for what was allowed, tolerated in the frickin' training rooms, the meeting rooms," Payton said in an apparent reference to Hackett allowing Wilson's entourage to have an active presence in the facility. The offense, I don't know Hackett. A lot of people have dirt on their hands. It wasn't just Russell. He didn't just flip. He still has it. This BS that he hit a wall, shoot, they couldn't get a play in. They were 29th in the league in pre-snap penalties on both sides of the ball. It doesn't happen often where an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed, Payton told Bell. And that happened here. Part of it was their own fault relative to spending so much effing time trying to win the offseason, the PR, the pomp and circumstance, marching around and all this stuff. Everything I heard about last season, we're doing the opposite. And okay, so that's him talking about really just the state of the Broncos last year. And then he goes after the Jets specifically here. In explaining the decision to just focus on the work, Payton took a backhanded shot at Hackett's new team in New York. So he both, sorry, Bradley, he both ripped into Nathaniel Hackett as a head coach for the Broncos, which we all know he did a terrible job. He got fired before the season was even over. They had to bring in someone to help him manage the clock. Like, this is just pouring salt in the wounds at this point. Although, I am curious why he did it. If he really didn't think he was off the record, which was my initial thought, right? Like, there was a miscommunication with the reporter, but he hasn't said that. Payton. He's basically just been standing by and saying like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No, he basically just said I was a broadcaster right before I became a coach again. So like I still had like my pundit hat on. He even referred to Jarrett Bell, the reporter, as his friend. So he wasn't like I was taken out of context, got railroaded or anything. He really was like, yeah, I said it and I meant it, but I probably shouldn't have said it.
But he didn't say any of this when he was in media. I mean, was he on Fox Sports ripping into coaching?
No, I think he was actually far more diplomatic than he was in this particular conversation.
So that doesn't make any sense. So he went after Nathaniel Hackett and protected Russell Wilson. I mean, let's be real though. maybe he's trying to build, honestly, Russell up in the media. I think that might have been the motivation, but he went too far. Then he goes after the Jets specifically. We're not doing any of that, Payton said, talking about like pomp and circumstance or whatever. The Jets did that this year. You watch Hard Knocks, all of it. I can see it coming. Remember when Dan Snyder put that dream team together? Payton said, I was at the Giants that year. I was a young coach. I thought, how are we going to compete with them? Dion's there now. That team won 8 games or whatever. So listen, just put the work in. And then, you know, the GM quote that I referenced talking about the Broncos here, he's talking about Russell Wilson. That wasn't his fault, about the distractions that dragged down the Broncos. That was the parents who allowed it. That's not an incrimination on him, but an incrimination on the head coach, the GM, the president, and everybody else who watched it all happen. That's the GM that is currently still there, George Payton.
He's still around.
Yeah.
The guy who signed Russell Wilson.
Yep. And traded for him.
Or traded for him, excuse me, yeah.
That too. I mean, signed and then extended him without him ever taking a regular season snap. They gave him a like mega extension that has forced them to be married to Russell Wilson for far longer than I think they probably want to in the end. But with all that said, okay, so Sean Payton just no holds barred went for it. Aaron Rodgers was asked about this by NFL Network, and say what you want about Aaron Rodgers, if I was in his position and say, like, I don't know, someone went after Sam like that, right? I mean, Sam would be too competent to get the Hackett treatment, but like, I don't know, someone that I was friends with and had worked with, I'd probably react in a similar way. And Aaron Rodgers has a lot of problems, but loyalty to the guys that he likes is not one of them. And this is how he reacted to what Sean Payton had to say.
I'm not going to ask you about Sean Payton's comments directly, but I will ask you to maybe address Nathaniel Hackett as a coach and what he means to you and what he can bring to this Jets team. That story goes out there. I had about 1 million texts from people in the coaching community saying that was out of line. Yet you see Hackett out here, he's still pumped up. I don't think it affects him as much as maybe it affects everyone on the outside. And yet you and him have this great bond and union together where you've always had his back, he's always had yours.
Yeah, I love Nathaniel Hackett, and those comments were very surprising. For a coach to do that to another coach. My love for Hackett goes deep. You know, we had some great years together in Green Bay, kept in touch. Love him and his family. He's an incredible family man, incredible dad. And on the field, you know, he's arguably my favorite coach I've ever had in the NFL. Just his approach to it, how he makes it fun, how he cares about the guys, just how he goes about his business with respect, with leadership, with honesty, with integrity. And it made me feel bad that someone who's accomplished a lot in the league is that insecure that they have to take another man down to set themselves up for some sort of easy fall if it doesn't go well for that team this year. I thought it was way out of line and inappropriate, and I think he needs to keep my coach's names out of his mouth.
Oop. Wowza. How's that feel, Bradley, to see
he's right.
Your quarterback say that in the Jets hat?
Keep Nathaniel Hackett's name out of your mouth, Sean.
Yeah, I mean...
You sicko. What the hell is wrong with you?
I respect it. Look, Aaron Rodgers, a lot of problems, as we say, but
You come after a storied franchise like the New York Jets like that? And you think it's we're just gonna let it slide?
Yeah, get out of here. Get the
I'm walking here, Sean Payton.
Here. Hey.
And it's so sad because I read those comments and I literally was like, you know what? I'm kind of pissed off that he said this, but like, he's not wrong.
No, I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
As in the sense of like, I do understand the concerns about like the winning the offseason and then really not meeting expectations relative to, you know, predictions in terms of what people are talking about before anyone's even stepped on the field. Certainly, I get it. But at the same time, I almost just think for your sake, like, I feel like there's a code sort of with these guys. So it just seems like you really broke the code.
The problem is just like, it never seemed like Nathaniel Hackett was a bad guy. He was just way in over his head. And so this is just making it so like that, I don't know, this hurts his potential employment in the future. And that's not cool. It's one thing if it's, you know, hurting someone like John Gruden's employment in the future because he's a racist little twerp. But I mean, that's not like, it doesn't seem to be the case with Hackett. This is just it was apparent to everybody that he had a bad year.
And also to your point, I think there are a few things involved as well. That one, like, there are situations where guys are much better suited to being coordinators or assistants than they are to being head coaches, because like being a head coach is not very much, at least from a lot of reporting on it, because it's a little like inscrutable sometimes of like how each person operates necessarily, because it's such a large amount of people that you are like overseeing, especially as an NFL head coach. You're sort of like a head of like a small business or a head of like a semi-large business. You know, you have basically 100 people at your employ and numerous different streams of hierarchies for each position and things like that. So like not everyone's suited to that. Like not everyone really can handle that, or not with everyone involved in that position. It doesn't play to everyone's strengths necessarily. And I think we learned that with Hackett, but also I don't think he's entirely to blame when we were hearing reports that Russ was forgetting play calls or signals or rehashing play calls and signals from Seattle, which his players
he was refusing for the first part of the year to wear the wristband.
Of
so
plays.
He could remember the plays because he didn't think it looked cool.
Like I don't only want to fully like hit this entirely on Russell, because I don't think Hackett's completely blameless either. But I don't think it was entirely, this is a malicious and bad coach because of like how poorly things went in Denver. This isn't an Urban Meyer situation where there are clear reports of like legitimate malice that Urban Meyer exhibited towards his players and coaches, and that there was a significant
malice and incompetence.
Malice and incompetence towards his players and coaches,
was just
and
incompetence.
strategizing. This was just incompetence. I don't think many people had a lot of really negative things to say about Hackett personally. And he got a job very quickly after. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, of course, I think Rodgers had a lot to do with that, but still, I mean, Robert Saleh could have just not hired that guy.
Yeah, the offense in Green Bay was pretty good. Speaking of Urban Meyer, speaking of Jacksonville, Nathaniel Hackett was able to make Blake Bortles look serviceable.
Right, that's true.
And Blake Bortles is garbage. So I keep saying garbage. That's my new favorite word of the day.
Garbage.
I mean, let's be real. Blake Bortles, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
Speaking of Blake Bortles,
I'll never forget that discourse. I don't know what was worse, the Johnny Manziel, the Tim Tebow, or the Blake Bortles discourse, where people were like, "These guys are great."
Who's the most elite?
These guys are so bad.
Who's the most elite of all three guys?
Yeah.
And it was probably the 27-year-old rookie, in Bortles.
Oh my God! I mean,
I don't think he was actually 27, but he was old. He wasn't like Brandon Whedon level old for rookie. But
I can't believe he was the 3rd overall pick.
Oh yeah,
where the quarterbacks prospects have gotten so much better. I mean, than like him and Jake Locker, people were reaching for Christian Ponder.
Even comparing this year of like the 2023 draft to like the 2012 draft is wild in terms of quarterback play.
But I mean, I guess.
And the game's changed too. I guess too.
So anyway, that's that. I think Sean Payton really stepped in it. Appreciate the content, but love the drums. And guess who the Jets play week 5?
The Broncos. Bulletin board material.
Oh yeah,
we're coming for you.
I'm curious now. Is that on prime time? I'm gonna check it out. Week 5. Good podcasting. Looking things up on air. You know I like to do that. Here we go. Week 5. They are not in prime time. They're a CBS standalone game. That stinks, but at least it's in the afternoon, so we'll be able to watch it. Cowboys 49ers is at night, and there's no way Cowboys are getting moved out of Cowboys 49ers is not getting moved out of prime time.
Oh God.
It's like 2 of the biggest fan bases in the country, so
they should move it for Jets Broncos. Give them the 1 p.m. slot. Nobody cares about Cowboys Niners.
Yeah, nobody.
Who
not
cares?
Not a soul.
Great playoff rematch. No one cares about it. I don't care about it. I care about hanging 45 points on Sean Payton and his loser team, his new loser team.
Well,
I'm pissed off right now. I'm fired up.
You getting pumped up?
Yeah. Week 5. It's going to be on my bulletin board in my apartment. I'm putting Sean Payton's face on it.
Dartboard material.
Yeah, exactly. Voodoo doll material.
All right, so then let's quickly just give a recap. I gotta be honest with you guys. I'm not watching tons of the Women's World Cup because it's on in the middle of the goddamn night. Like,
yeah, the delays have been tough. I've been keeping up. I just by reports on it, but it's hard to it's really far ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't love delays. I mean, the Olympics does that too because they're trying to get the best time slot. I could just look up what happened. I could just look up what happened.
Yeah, so I think I've been tuning in that, and also I feel like the group stages are exciting for certain very good groups where in the sense that when the 3 out of 4 teams basically are really competitive, which the U.S. I think has sort of found itself in.
Yeah,
they're in a kind of a tough group. Although the knockout stages will be very exciting once it kind of gets down to the sudden death games, and
the U.S. is playing Portugal at 3 a.m. After this airs, and that should essentially determine. They can advance with a win or a draw against Portugal, or if the Netherlands loses. But there were some. There's already been some determinations in the group.
Yeah, New Zealand. Unfortunately, one of the hosts of the tournament has already been bounced.
But Switzerland is advancing out of that group. Norway, runner-up of the group. Shout out to my
Scandinavians.
I don't have family in Norway anymore, but Vigeland is a Norwegian name, or Vigeland, as they say. But
Sweden and Norway both very good. So I mean, would you say Switzerland or Sweden?
Switzerland.
Oh yeah, Switzerland and Norway are both quite good. So that kind of makes sense. And
Australia
Portugal
won.
Oh yeah, Australia won,
group.
and they're also very very good.
Nigeria advanced as well. Japan won their group. Spain advanced. Of those, wait, did Australia win?
Let's see.
Gosh, dang it!
I'm looking.
Because there's a typo and it said Australia lost, but I don't know. That's not on me.
Australia advanced past Canada 4-0.
Who else? Who got eliminated in that group? Is it Austria?
Yeah, maybe that. I'll double check that as well. But maybe that's the other AUS country that we're talking about.
Japan advanced. They won. Spain advanced. England's probably going to advance in their group, as I mentioned, the USA as well. France is likely to advance in their group. Sweden has qualified to move on. So once it starts getting narrowed down, I feel like I'm going to pay a little bit more attention. And if the U.S. women's national team is as good as advertised, even though they got off to kind of a slow start, and I know that Megan Rapinoe was benched and was not playing, which I think was she was pretty vocal about not liking that, but we support her. Really.
Yeah, so Australia, the YouTube chat's confirming, but I'm also confirming Australia beat Canada. And advanced, yeah. So Canada bowed out.
Right, well.
Yeah, Australia has Sam Kerr, who's one of if not the best women's players. She's also dating a U.S. Women's player, Christy Mewis.
Cool.
Fun little cross cultural.
Oh, that would be a fun little.
I
love those.
If they played each other, yeah.
Oh yes.
And they did a few either last year or the year before in one of the big tournaments. They played each other, and there was this sad. I mean, kind of fun, emotional, but iconic photo of Christy Mewis comforting Sam Kerr after they beat them.
Oh, really?
Which is it's just because they were
I mean, we've seen
comforting your significant other after you beat them on the world stage.
I love that. We've seen, Serena versus Venus, right? But a spouse is kind of, or a partner. That's a whole different level, right?
And then also, so Portugal, interestingly enough, I've been reading a bunch of the defector coverage of the World Cup and the previews to kind of get myself primed for each of these teams. And Portugal, it's interesting, is very much a robust and storied men's soccer country, which is not really. Whereas the women's side of things has not been nearly as invested in or prioritized. So they're sort of kind of on the come up as a younger, less definitive or definitional team as compared to like the men's side of things in the world and in global play, but they should, I mean, pose a little bit of a challenge to the U.S. But I would predict, ideally, if the U.S.'s offense can pick up a little bit, they won't have a very hard time beating Portugal.
Gotcha.
Because Sophia Smith, who I would say is one of, if not their best offensive player, hasn't even really gotten super hot yet. So I feel like there's still a lot of time for, you know, her and Trinity Rodman and what's her name, Crystal Dunn from Portland, for them to kind of get going. So I'm excited for. I think they got a good shot.
All right.
I think they got a good shot to advance.
Thank you for being the World Cup correspondent.
Oh, absolutely.
Bradley.
This is me coming in from Auckland.
And from Defector, as always.
Oh yeah, they do a lot of great soccer coverage there. Patrick Redford and Billy Hazley are very, very good soccer, and Luis Paez Pumar, great soccer coverage there.
Well, I mean, hey, we can't go through one ESVN episode without a Defector plug.
Of course, absolutely.
That's required.
I would be remiss if I wasn't plugging them.
Yes. Another soccer story here that I think is interesting. So, Mbappe is getting courted to the tune of basically $1 billion by the Saudis. And I don't know all of the politics behind this or the contract structure, so forgive me. But what it appears to be is $1 billion total that the Saudi Pro League club Al Hilal would pay to PSG and to Mbappe if this is the offer that's on the table. Essentially, it's a $332 million transfer fee that goes to PSG, and then $776 million of salary for one season that would go to Mbappe, which is insane because those kinds of numbers are what are being discussed in terms of what PSG would offer Mbappe for a multi-year contract. And this could get dicey because I think he's in the last year of his deal. His contract expires. And the deadline for all of this is September 1st. And then PSG is worried about not getting anything for him if he were to leave PSG and go to Real Madrid, which is some of the rumors about Mbappe. I mean, I don't know. He's French. I could see him wanting to stay at PSG, stay at home. But I mean, this is another example of the Saudis trying to sports wash, and they're getting closer and closer to sports that aren't just, you know, golf, which, let's be real, I enjoy watching golf sometimes, but it's not soccer. It's not footy, and it's not the NBA, which I think is the next frontier. They're going to start offering mega contracts to some of these NBA stars to get them away from the NBA.
Yeah, I mean the PSL or the public PIF, the Public Investment Fund for Saudi Arabia has like a 3% share now in like the Washington Wizards ownership group. So it's like they're sort of just trying to follow the business model of like the way that the U.S. sort of has like conquered a lot of markets, and the same thing with Europe, with soccer, with football. Like they just, I think, with all the money they can throw around, they just want to be able to do that. You know, they just want to be able to be like, oh, like if you guys can buy, if Inter Miami can buy Lionel Messi and spurn us, maybe we can buy Kylian Mbappe, and he won't spurn us and he'll see those dollar signs and be like, you know what, fine, I'll go play in Riyadh or whatever.
But if he doesn't want to stay with PSG, which is what people are speculating about, then he would make all that money by just playing one season,
right.
And then walk away after his contract that would be traded to the Saudi to Al Hilal. Then he could just walk away completely free and then go play for Real Madrid. So for him, it's like, okay. I mean, I don't know how you turn that down.
It's hard to pass up when it's a really short-term endeavor, and you could most likely, like as you said, get the lion's share of the money and then defect again to be somewhere else, where if say he doesn't want to, like, you know, stay in Saudi Arabia and also doesn't want to play necessarily in that level of competition because they're desperately trying to build up their league and
they
their
offered
teams.
they offered Messi a similar contract.
Exactly.
He turned it down,
which is hilarious because he's also already a tourism ambassador for Saudi Arabia. So maybe he already was like, I'm getting that money anyway.
Ronaldo's playing for
that's right.
for in a team in Riyadh.
Right.
So like they are starting to peel this off. And PSG is probably going to be pretty motivated to get this done if they have a sense that he is not going to return next summer.
Yeah.
So
Ronaldo's with Al Nassr.
Gotcha.
The Saudi Professional League club. Yeah.
It's just, we're getting inching closer and closer to these ultimate takeovers, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
The money is just so overwhelming. To put it into perspective, that 1 year contract, what he would make in 1 year, is more than LeBron James has made in his entire career. It is more than the $500 million 10-year contract that Patrick Mahomes has signed up for, which is also on an annual basis. He's now like 8th in quarterback salary, which seems ridiculous because he's maybe the best player in the history of the NFL. But putting that aside, nuts. And just another example. Saudis, they're not stopping. And they've got so much cash.
Yeah, this is such a concerted effort to just try and not even necessarily. They're just trying to not only dominate, but just sort of start to be like, we simply by how much money we can throw are forces to be reckoned with in the world of sport.
Yep.
That's it.
All right, guys, we are going to take a quick break, and I believe Arian is going to join us. Be right back. Stay tuned. We are back, and we are thrilled to welcome to the program Arian Foster, 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro, NFL rushing yards leader in 2010, 2-time rushing touchdown leader in 2010 and 2012, and the Houston Texans all-time rushing leader, co-host of the Macro Dosing podcast with PFT commenter. Arian, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate you having me. It seems like a lifetime ago, all that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, when I first started getting into football, I mean this, I'm not trying to gas you up. Like, you were one of my favorite players, because it was like when you ran, it looked like you were gliding on skates, basically, when you were able to actually break free too. But you were able to push the pile even more so. You weren't just a speed guy. And I just remember watching you play, and it was a great time.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it for sure, man. It seems so long ago. It's just, I don't know. I feel like so much life has happened since then.
Yeah.
And plus I was in an entirely different mind state back then. Just like how I grew up, and then now just kind of just being a father. Now is pretty much being a father in golf is all I do, really.
Really? Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to talk to you because one, we chatted briefly after the Tim Pool debate, which I was happy to hear that you appreciated. But that guy is a total clown.
Interesting for sure.
Yeah. But because right now we're in the midst of like this really important moment in the NFL. Mm-hmm. For the running back position in particular. And I remember you were one of the first players to really speak out about how fantasy football in particular can be degrading as a player. Like, what was that experience like when your body's breaking down, your mentions are filled with idiots yelling at you about their fantasy football team, and you're just trying to win for your team and just get healthy on a week-to-week basis? Like, what was that experience like for you?
Initially, I mean, when I first got into the league, that's when social media first kind of started like blowing up. Like Twitter was like this thing. I think it first started like 2009, 10ish, which is when I first got into the league. Facebook was kind of prevalent, but when I was in college is when first Facebook kind of kicked off, and it was just used to go meet up with the fellas and hang out. It was like that was kind of MySpace was still around, and so we didn't fully grasp the monster that was going to become. And back then, like when I was in college, like message boards were a big thing for like individual college teams. Everybody had a message board and the fandom would be on there. My mom was really prevalent on those. So I kind of got an early glimpse of like a lot of the hate that comes with the territory. But then fantasy football for me kicked off, and it was just this whirlwind of like, hold on, dog, like what? Why do you feel like you could just talk to me like this? It was just new for me. And
yeah,
I mean, I understood that, you know, you are people's entertainment. And as my career went on, you kind of accepted it more and kind of just brushed it to the wayside. But at the beginning, it was really wild because like, I'm a really genuine human being. And like, if you approach me on the street, I'm just a regular cat. I just look at people as people. And when it first started kicking off, I was just like genuinely like, yo, can I cuss on this?
Yeah.
I was like, fuck these people.
Please.
Like, I just didn't understand. And I was like, yo, you would never say this to me face to face. Like, why you feel so emboldened? And I never really got used to it. But what I did understand and I eventually accepted was it helps people that weren't really into football get into football. And so it grew the game in a very odd, demeaning way.
Yeah.
and I had to disassociate myself from my name, honestly.
I mean, the demeaning element is like you're perceived as some sort of commodity for other people's consumption. And what you talk about how it's such an important part of the game and how much it grew the game. I know people in my life never watched football before, but like they have a work league or a league with their friends and they get into it and it brings eyeballs to the NFL. I mean, it's as marketable of an element of the sport as it could possibly be. And yet, this is, I guess, what brings us to like the modern era. The most highly drafted popular fantasy players are the running backs. Yeah. And those are the ones getting most screwed over for this literal marketing dream for the NFL, which is bringing in people who might not even be interested in sports to watching the product. If you could just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I actually never have thought of it from that standpoint of it is running backs are the most valuable asset in fantasies because they produce so much, depending on the point structure of the league. But yeah, I've never thought about it from that aspect. But I think it's a variation of a few different things that's going on. For years, the running back has been marketed as not valuable or replaceable by media talking heads. And then after a while, it starts to seep in like, the next guy does do kind of just as well. And it's a continual thing that just kind of rolled over. But the reality of the situation is it's the hardest position to play physically. And the reason why I say this is because it has the least amount of shelf life. If it has the least amount of shelf life, you know, I mean, it fits in the capitalistic structure perfectly, right? Because it's a supply and demand thing. So I get their argument, but my thing is, you lock these players into these contracts, especially coming out of college, and then you hit them with a franchise tag, which is beneficial for nobody but you, as the owner and as a franchise. And so you're doing a disservice to your workers, is what it is. And I've always said that the NFL doesn't actually care about their players. They just care about the money, the bottom dollar, which is, like I said, it's the economy we live in. But to go back to your point, it's an accumulation of all of those things, the media pumping it up, and then the fans buying into the narrative, and it's just a snowball effect. And now you got people like who I had somebody in my mentions the other day because I said the exact same thing on my podcast, and it was like, because I said running backs take over the game all the time. That's a valuable asset, right? That's worth millions of dollars. And it was like, when's the last time a running back has taken over the game? I'm like, are we watching the same thing? I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? I just don't understand people's thought processes. But it's like I said, it's a combination of all of those things, and it's going to continue to happen until you pull your label.
But okay, so you mentioned the franchise tag, right? That is a part of the problem, particularly for the position, because like the fact that running back contracts are structured in the exact same way that other positions are, I think it really is at the heart of the issue here, because they'll be on a rookie contract for 4 years, 5 years. If the 5th year option gets picked up, then they can get tagged. I mean, Saquon Barkley's going through this right now. And then at the end of that period of time, they are now devalued because, they have too much wear and tear on their body, as opposed to, like, if the CBA was structured differently, it would mean that running backs could maybe get out of those rookie contracts more quickly, potentially. And this is just a solution that I'm asking your opinion on. And then they could get that second payday before the wear and tear is used against them on their in a contract talk. I'm curious what you think about that solution.
I think that would be beneficial. Again, I have a buddy that was on the NFLPA, or he used to go to their meetings and stuff. I'm not entirely convinced that they're on the player side, but that's another conversation. There's no need for a franchise tag. I think it's the only major sport with a franchise tag. It makes no sense, and it's just clearly to devalue a position or a player. And interestingly enough, it's the exact opposite of what all these people say that they want, which is a free market. It's negotiation, and the franchise tag takes away the free market, and it takes away negotiation. Said you're slotted. It doesn't make sense, but again, we live in a society where this is marketed as good business from ownership perspective, right? But if a player says, "Well, fuck that, this isn't good for me. I'm holding out until you meet my demands," then he's an asshole. Then he's selfish. Then he's greedy. And we've created this narrative, and we've created this ecosystem of just giving a shit about these multi-billion-dollar owners and their feelings. And it's always good business when they do it, but when we do it, we're greedy. And it's just ass backwards. And it's like, it's not gonna, like, there has to be something to be done. It has to be addressed, but it's not gonna do it until a new CBA. I know that, because they won't budge. They don't care. They don't give a shit. But I mean, you have owners. Go ahead.
That reminds me of what Jim Irsay said. Did you see that about the CBA and how?
I heard. I didn't see like the direct quote though.
Yeah, I'll read you the direct quote here. I think I have it in front of me because it's just so absurd. NFL running back situation. We have negotiated a CBA that took years of effort and hard work and compromise and good faith by both sides. To say now that the specific player category wants another negotiation after the fact is inappropriate. Some agents are selling bad faith. And then he gave some like quote to a reporter where he said, if I were to die tomorrow and Jonathan Taylor would be out of the league goes on, pretending like he and Jonathan Taylor are on some same playing field. And it's like, the dude inherited the team. He's just like he got lucky in the fact that his dad was a rich guy. Now he owns a bunch of collectible guitars and sports memorabilia, one of which is probably what he's paying Jonathan Taylor this year, right? Like one of his toy guitars that he has. And he's pretending like the billionaire and the guy trying to get paid in the 7-year window for his career are the same kind of person. Like, what's your experience with how delusional these owners can be, honestly?
Well, it don't surprise me that he says something like that. That it's how they feel. We were their hobby. Like, this is what they do, and then they meet up like in the summertime and talk about, well, we beat y'all, and this is we're just a hobby to them. And I get we're compensated very fairly, so I don't ever want to put that, I don't want to lose that perspective. But I think the perspective that I try to get people to see all the time is that which is in the macro is also in the micro. We're fighting these same labor wars all across our economy right now, and the pay structure is obviously structured different because of the product, but it's the exact same thing. And people are always sympathetic towards these owners, and that's how they feel. They don't feel any kind of humanization unless they develop a personal relationship with you. Like, there's very few cases that happens, but it does happen. And those are rare. Like, you'll have like Udonis Haslem, the basketball player for the Miami Heat, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's strictly on that team, and you know, I love him. He's a great dude, but he's on that team because he's a good dude, and the owner loves him. Like, that's all he's on the team for. And he's going to be there until he doesn't want to do it anymore. Like, there's stuff like that happens, but for the most part, they just want to maximize their profits. And I think, like, when it comes to like running backs, and he says it's unfair, like, it's just a laughable statement. It's just a laughable statement to say that the NFL is the same league. And I think, when was the last CBA signed? It was like 2011, I think. Maybe?
No, it was more recent, and that's why I think it's going to be so long. Bradley, you can look that up for me when the last CBA was in. But that's, I think, why it's such an issue for the current crop of backs, just because they're not. The owners are saying you can't renegotiate or whatever until some years down the line, even though they did renegotiate it during COVID. Right. But that's beside the point. That was to help the owners.
Yeah, it was for them though. They will not budge on that. I will bet my last dollar on that. I don't know when the last CBA was, but I mean, to pretend like the league isn't malleable and it's moving, it's always changing. And right now, the current status, it is not fair for the running back market. Everybody knows that. Everybody has been known that. But again, they don't care. They don't care about Saquon Barkley. They don't care about Henry or McCaffrey. They don't care about these cats as human beings. And they'll say, like, you know what, like, you provided me a product that was well past what I paid you. So let me compensate you for that. They don't think like that. They think, well, shit, we got a good deal. And they're going to continue to do that.
Right. I guess it was 2011, then ratified in 2020, extends through 2030. Thanks for looking that up, Bradley.
So the old one was, I thought it was. So the old one was 2011, and then they just changed some stuff for COVID, right?
I think so. I think so.
And I think that was my initial thought, was because I was in the league in 2011, and we actually had a lockout year where we didn't go to the facility for all of the offseason, and it was because the new CBA was getting redone. It's an entirely different game it was then as it is now.
What was that like? Like, I mean, when you're talking with fellow players as a part of the NFLPA and the union, I mean, the difference, I think, from other labor actions is that your guys' careers are so finite, and when you can capitalize on your skills. And for a lot of guys, I'd imagine, any kind of holdout situation is like, well, that's another year off my life where I'm on my athleticism. I can't take advantage of it. Did you feel like that undercut some of the potential solidarity with other players, or does it have to do with players being in different position groups?
Yeah, I think everybody's interests were different, so it's hard to collectively bargain. You have to kind of just go with the flow of things, and which is why I'm not really keen on the NFLPA and how they do things. They give you, minimal updates, and I don't want to get into the weeds of that, but I remember thinking because it was 2011, so it was right before that was the year before I signed my deal. They tagged me, and it wasn't even a franchise tag, because I was undrafted, and so I actually led the league in rushing on a rookie deal, an undrafted rookie deal. So I got league minimum that year, and so they got more than the value of what for 2 years. Yeah, for 2 years. But I was never compensated for that. They was just like, okay, we'll talk to you when your deal's up. But no, they never. It was one of those things where I remember thinking, I have to work. Like, I'm not making millions of dollars like these other cats. Like, these other cats could have just chilled for the rest of their life. But I was like, I'm gonna go when they say we can go, because I wasn't, even though I was fresh off leading the league in rushing, I made minimum, which is good money, but it's nothing I could fall back on for the rest of my life.
Yeah, of course not. And I mean, like, the fact that you were undrafted, I'm curious what you think about, in the NBA, you just have, if you're going to play college basketball, you just have to play 1 year and then you can enter the draft. That's a totally different situation for the NFL, and I think it particularly hurts guys like, running backs, right? Because that's another year of them not getting compensated at all. Let's be real. Like, I mean, you can talk. I'm curious about your college experience as well, but like where they're getting hit a bunch of times in college, and then that gets used against them later on when they're trying to get paid. Would you be? What would you think if they could change the rules so running backs could enter the league when they were maybe 2 years in or 1 year into college? Do you think that could help things?
I think they actually took this to the Supreme Court. I believe it was Maurice Claret, running back that used to play for Ohio State, and he tried to come out of the league. Come to the league after his freshman year. And I believe they said that 3 years minimum was like safe. And I guess my response to that is it's really contingent on the player. I know dudes that out of high school they can compete in the NFL. Just physical stature wise. But I know dudes that, and that's a rare case, but I know dudes that need that time to develop their bodies and lift and eat right and gain the muscle mass in order, because it's a physical sport. It's not basketball where we can just go down and maybe take a charge and that's physical. This is like dudes breaking ribs and bones and it hurts. And so I think sometimes you need your body to develop. I'm unsure if there's a objective gauge for that. It's really just a case by case thing from my experience. I don't think I could have came out of high school into the NFL. I needed some time for my body to mature and develop.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. It's just there's just other solutions that need to be explored, like maybe a fantasy fund, right? When you were the fantasy darling, bringing all these people to watch Houston Texans games that might not have, like, you should have been compensated for that instead of being an undrafted player accomplishing all this stuff. And then, I mean, can you talk about your mentality when you're playing on that rookie deal and what it's like to know that you're just one bad hit away from your career just being irrevocably changed and you not being able to get that second contract?
I remember my first year I started, which was 2010, and I led the league in rushing. My mindset was so, and that's why I say at the beginning of the episode, it just feels like a lifetime ago, because like in order to get myself into that mindset, it's like an entirely different, it's just an aggressive, like I'm just a different human, like on the field than I am like off of it. I'm like a different human being. And I remember that year, 2010, it was like I just didn't care. I didn't care about anything. And that's the mindset you gotta take. It's very just like almost like you're going to war. It's like that kind of like gut wrenching, like we about to do that. And then I remember 2011 when my rookie deal was up. I remember the last game of the season we were playing the Colts, and those thoughts started creeping in my head. And I used to have those thoughts vividly, like, hey, yo, what if you tear your ACL on this play? And it's just like I had to fight those thoughts like constantly. And I was like, yo, you got to trust your training. You got to trust your condition. You have to trust. And I'm having that internal dialogue along with having to execute my assignment. And I'm not saying that to woe is me, but it's a real thing that mentally I had to, push through. And, luckily I was able to, sustain, money for myself and my family that, I earned, but a lot of guys didn't. I know a lot of guys that got hurt before their first contract or even in college that were NFL bound that will never be able to get that back. And the NCAA is an entirely different conversation. They've been still in labor for decades.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't watch college football because of it. I mean, I know that maybe that's, I can't watch these kids not. I mean, NIL's made it a little bit better, but that's only for the top of the most marketable guys. I mean, what's your? I think I can tell, but what's your stance on paying players in college?
So my alma mater is University of Tennessee, and to this day, a lot of people there. I should say some, because I went back recently, had a very good experience, but a lot of people there, like the fans of it, they cannot stand me, and it's because when I was in the NFL. I did this documentary called Schooled, The Price of College Sports. And I was just calling out the hypocrisy of the NCAA and the stupid rules that they have implemented. And I said publicly for the first time, like, yeah, I took money under the table. I was like, everybody does it, and everybody knows that they do. I said, but I was the only one that admitted it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the NCAA calls after the documentary comes out. It was like trending on Twitter. It was like a big deal. And I never said who gave me money, right? I wasn't into that. But
Yeah.
the NCAA, I get a phone call saying I'm so and so from the NCAA, and we're conducting an investigation. And they was like, "Do you want to cooperate?" I was like, "Hell no!" I hung up. I was like, "What, cooperate with what? Like y'all are crooks." And so they conducted an investigation, but it was all cash, so there was no way they could trace it. But I've been very adamant about speaking about the NCAA and how they've been taking money from kids, and like I said, ironically, these are the same people that want a free market, except when it comes to college athletes, they don't want a free market there.
It's just unreal when you see also just how much, say, Nick Saban gets paid, or Lane Kiffin, or
Dabo Swinney is the worst.
Oh yeah.
Dabo Swinney, he's like so adamant about kids not getting paid. And like, it's just it.
What's wrong with you?
Like, I would love for somebody to sit down and just like pick his bullshit apart, because he's so full of shit.
I feel like college football coaches, I mean, you don't need to confirm this, but I feel like they're maybe per capita some of the like most, I don't know, somewhat racist people in the in like, if you were to pick a class of people who professionally are like, they really just they want to have complete and total power over their workforce, to the point where it borders on some really problematic territory. I'll just say that.
Well, he's also just a sanctimonious guy, Sweeney. He's the guy who said, "We built this program on NIL. We built this program in God's name, image, and likeness." It's like God's not writing any checks to those guys.
Yeah.
I don't think.
There's a very interesting relationship between religiosity and Southern football, and the militaristic mindset of football in general, right? So when I first get to the South, I came from the West Coast, right? I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then went to high school in San Diego. And so like I was very West Coast, to my core. Like the way they did things out there was not, it was a culture shock when I went to the South. And so when I was like in the West Coast, you talk to adults how you talk to kids. There's a certain level of respect, but nobody's like making you call them ma'am or sir. Like that was never a thing with where I grew up. My mother and father never did that. And so when I first get to the South, I'm in a meeting room and somebody, calls my name, one of the coaches, and I go, huh? And he's like, huh? He's like, that's so disrespectful. Like he just starts going off on me. I'm like, what the fuck did I do? And I'm looking around like, did I do something wrong? Like, what the fuck is going on? And it's just that culture of like, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And I butted heads so much with my coaching staff because I just wasn't from the South. And I was like one of the only players that wasn't from the South. And on top of that, they would like, they had this thing where they would just like, and it's like a coaching culture in general, but it's like, you just yell and you scream and you cuss at kids and you just cuss them out. And I was like, it just blew my mind, because I was like, hey, yo, coach, if you tell me to do something, I promise you I'm going to do it. But you don't got to cuss at me. You don't got to yell at me. Like, it's not, I don't react that way. And so I understand certain cats need that. Certain cats need structure, but I feel like that's a mark of a good coach, is you know who does and who doesn't need that. But it's the culture around it that I found very odd, and it alludes to the undertones of what you're alluding to, which is that Southern mentality that we all know.
And I mean, I think that they're like, I'm curious if you think this is the case, but in the NFL, did you feel like there was more respect because you were actually professionals and they weren't treating you as if like I mean, I think part of it is they don't want to pay players because in college football, because then they might have a little bit more power and you can't do what you want to do to them in the same way. The NFL has a ton of problems, but I'm curious if you felt there was a culture shift once you got to the league.
Yeah, it's more what I wanted in college. I wanted the atmosphere that I got in the NFL in college. What I wanted was, tell me what I got to do. The onus is on me. If I do or do not do it, I'm on the chopping block. I get it. Like just treat me with respect. I'll treat you with respect, and we'll go on about our business. That's exactly how they treat you in NFL. They say, hey, if you don't want to do it this way and do it correctly, we'll get somebody else that does. It's very professional. It's cutthroat, but like that's how I wanted it. In college, it's like they want to ingrain their values into you. Like I remember getting getting yelled at because everybody went to church one Sunday. Like the whole team got on a bus and went to church, and I didn't go to church. I was an atheist in college, and they were like saying I'm a bad teammate, and they're just going on. And I'm just like, all because I don't go to church. Like it was like that kind of thing just permeated college football, whereas in the NFL, they kind of let you be a man, and that's another aspect that they're going to start having to deal with is teaching kids about one, financial literacy in college. They should do that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But two, that if you got a kid that's making more than a coach, that relationship still has to be, a certain amount of respect there. And I think they feel like they would lose it if the kids are making more money when it's not. I don't think that's the case. You just have to treat them with respect.
Yeah, well, I mean, then I feel like some of those coaches might be more in the NFL. I feel like some, the college guys, they like that power a little bit. That's their and that's pretty perverse in my opinion. But lastly here before I let you go, you touched a little bit on how you were an atheist or you are an atheist. I don't know now, but that's pretty unique because like there's so much prayer in college football and things like that. And I mean, I don't know what was that like for you? Because I don't believe in God. I'm not sure what I am, but I'm just not religious in any way. And the culture of football is so antithetical to that. And it must have been a really unique experience for you to kind of have different beliefs from a lot of your teammates.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. Like every team I've ever been on says the Our Father prayer before, so I know it by heart just because it's all like I was been around this as a kid. So, I think when I was a little younger, like when I was in my 20s, I was kind of like anti-theist. Now I would more describe myself as just I don't know what the fuck's going on, but it just I don't live my life in any kind of religious way. I think that I do respect people that don't try to force their beliefs on anybody else, and so I respect religion in that aspect. But when you try to infuse it with like policy or something like then that's when I have an issue with it. But as far as to your question, it was a different experience because one, I was coming from the culture shock of the West Coast to the South, and I was one of the only cats that was from there. On top of the fact I wasn't religious, it just was like this perfect storm of like, oh, you're not a good kid. And I dealt with that a lot in college, and it kind of shaped me into like having this very pessimistic view of authority figures and just in general.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I don't think it hurt me too much. I think, but as a young kid growing up, kind of, and you're kind of on your own. Because my family life, my mother and father were there for me, but they had their own shit going on. I think it didn't cultivate a nurturing environment for a young man to grow, and so a lot of headaches and a lot of shit that I went through as a kid could have been smoother if there was an adult there that was just like, hey man, I see you struggling, I see you going through like something, just put me on his way. And that's no knock to anybody that I want to cross, but I think the world is a lot more open today than it was back then. When you heard back then in the South that you didn't believe in God, I remember one of my best friends to this day, actually, the first time I met him, he's like, you don't believe in Jesus? He's like, you're going to hell, right? As the first thing he ever said to me. He's like one of my best friends now though, but like it was just not a thing back then. And I wasn't as well versed and studied on it back then. Obviously, it's just something that I felt. But as I grew, I began to gain more respect for people who need that faith, and it does something for them, but it just doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, actual last question. I'll let you go. What's it like to work with PFT commentator? Because that guy makes me laugh so hard.
Yeah, that's my dude.
He's the man. He's so great.
He's hilarious, man. He's so funny. He's so witty. It's like a lot of the jokes you have to like double back because he's just so witty and he just off the cuff. It's so funny. He's actually I don't want to put his business out there, but his fan base don't match him. It's pretty funny.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what's a bummer because I feel like they don't get his politics in any way. But I mean, maybe just like planting little seeds in the audience's minds, right?
That's what he does. And so I'm on a podcast with him, and he has another one that's like really huge, and ours does pretty well. But like it's funny because like he has this like hardcore fan base that me and him will say the exact same shit, but like it all comes out on me, and it's the funniest shit. I just let it ride because it is what it is. But I'm like, yo, y'all have no idea.
Right.
And Aaron, did you interview George Santos as well with
we
PFT?
did. Oh my god. Yeah, we did. Oh my god.
Were you in studio with him?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my! I just if there's anything you want to say about that, I'm all ears.
First impressions, yeah.
Well, he's just. Actually, he's a very likable human. That's the problem. That's the problem, right? Is he's actually very likable and like a snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
But once we started talking, like one of the things, there's a bill he co-signed, and I forget who proposed it, but he co-signed a bill that wanted to make the national gun, make the gun the national something of America, like make it a national gun. And I was like, yo, that's the silliest shit in the world. And like I really took him to task on that, and like he didn't really have a response, but he was like, we have a national blah and a national. I'm like, yo, you do that to placate to your constituents. So because you know that they're avid gun lovers, like, but it's not gonna do anything. It's not gonna. And so I kind of take him to task on that aspect of how the majority of our Congress, they do that. They push these bills that are just they're show bills just to play
fan service.
But it doesn't actually do anything. And I'm like, this is the problem in our country. You are the problem. And he didn't have much response to it.
I gotta check that out because that guy endlessly fascinates me. All right, well, Arian Foster, I mean, really, really, thank you so much for coming on. It was great to talk to you. Check out Macro Dosing. Check out Arian's music. And just pop on some Arian Foster highlights, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You're the man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Really appreciate it.
Big fans of y'all, man. Take care.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
You too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, with that, we are gonna wrap up the first hour. Well, not the first hour. That's the majority report.
And in the fun half.
Yeah. We're gonna wrap up this episode. That worked out great, actually.
Wow. That was. I don't mean to fanboy on my own show, but that was really cool.
Pretty cool.
It is wild to be on a call with somebody that you literally grew up. Like, I remember being 14, 15, 16 years old watching him.
Yeah.
Really amazing stuff.
He was, incredible athlete. Do you guys? We can't show it on here because we'll get demonetized.
Copyright strike. Yeah.
But check out Arian Foster highlights if you have the time. I'm gonna read some IMs and then we're gonna get out of here. Will from Indiana, absolutely fantastic interview with Arian. Loved watching him play while growing up in the early 2010s. So a lot of nostalgia there. Again, this was when I was first getting into the NFL. I mean, it's like one of those players where it's like, oh, he's one of the 10 magical players in the league this year.
Yeah, because and for me, it's funny to think about that time too, because it was like the time, especially it was a specific heyday of certain wide receivers and running backs. It was like him and like Steven Jackson when he was on the Rams, and like Vincent Jackson on the Bucks as a wide receiver, and Andre Johnson, his teammate on the Texans. Like some of these just like really singular, exciting, kind of different mold running backs and wide receivers that we see now.
Yeah, I mean that was Marshawn Lynch.
Marshawn Lynch, the whole Legion of Boom era Seahawks. Like, it was very much it was like a specific.
Adrian
moment
Peterson was 27 that year. His other contemporary.
AP, absolutely.
I remember C.J. Spiller.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of these guys.
Remember Doug Martin?
Jamal Charles.
Doug Martin. It was in 2012.
The muscle hamster.
In 2012, it was AP, Doug Martin, and Arian Foster as the top 3 fantasy players in that year. That was Ray Rice. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I remember I think it's similar for us too. It's like for you and me both, of like kind of early high school for me when I really was starting to like become a football fan and like kind of like grow my consciousness outside of like the Jets.
Yes. Yeah. I was a little behind you, but I was in fantasy that year.
And I love that Ravens Super Bowl team.
Floyd the Barber says Anquan Bolden. Yes, another blast from the
loved
past of that
Anquan
era.
Bolden, one of my favorite players.
Yes.
I like fell in love with the 2013 Ravens team, like to the point where I bought an Ed Reed jersey.
Oh yeah.
Like I was obsessed with
That's
that
why
team.
I call them my AFC mistress.
Yeah.
They are my favorite.
It was obviously
AFC
quite a problematic team because, it was like helmed by Ray Lewis and Ray Rice, but it was obviously, but like still I loved them.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of why I fell in love with the Giants. Hard-hitting defense, like
exactly.
big bad MFers, right? That's...
And even like in like latter period, Steve Smith too was on the Ravens, which was like amazing too. Like the combo of like attitude and player was so right with Steve Smith and the Ravens.
It fit perfectly.
Just like a fucking, like you said, a bad motherfucker.
And then when we were in college, it was the Harbaugh
yes,
Bowl
exactly,
at the
exactly.
Super Bowl where
the power
Ravens
outage
won. Yeah.
Stop the count.
And that was when Joe Flacco kind of bet on himself, and then ended up getting this massive contract because they won the Super Bowl. Which
had like
sense.
Had probably one of the most like improbable postseason runs. Like I think he went something like 12 for 12 on touchdowns,
so
like
clutch.
something insane, and like then went all the way to the bank with it.
I'll finish Will from Indiana as I am here. Absolutely fantastic interview with Arian. Loved watching him play while growing up in the early 2010s, so a lot of nostalgia there. Really appreciated his perspective on so many big issues plaguing the NFL. This and your other NFL segments do have me pumped up for the upcoming season, though, and for the NHL, NBA, and IU athletics. Especially after the Major League Baseball deadline and the Cardinals selling, I'm in need of something much happier. Anyway, looking forward to
you and me both, Will. After Scherzer just got traded this weekend.
I mean,
and David Robertson, their closer.
The Mets are not in a good spot.
Mets are not looking good, I don't think.
Niall from Trinidad. Mbappe can't win a Championship League trophy with PSG. Mbappe wants trophies. He can only win domestic trophies with PSG. Also, check out the Upfront podcast for women's football. It's two ladies talking about football. Hopefully, you can do an interview with these ladies in the future, and we should do more interviews. Yeah, that's
good rec. That's
good
rec.
rec.
I have like there are a few sports where like I don't have like a go to like podcast that sort of like breaks stuff down for me. So that's a good
Perfect.
rec.
Kevin from San Francisco, congrats on 10K. Love you guys. Love you too. I'd get. I don't know. Try to get a good clip for us guys. Maybe even tell Arian he might be down to. I don't know what that means. So it said the I am before. A true win would be getting Tim Pool to complain about your talk with Arian Foster. I hope that's the ultimate goal for the interview. Yeah. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. That was an awesome interview. Football talk trashing Dabo Sweeney and George Santos. Hell yes. J-Man J's, great to see Arian on the show. Congrats on 10K subs, by the way. Also, I was right about the Mets selling. Left his best. Go Jays.
Yeah. Good eye. That was a prescient I am from last week, J-Man.
Yes, very much so. Left field is best. The Saudis' next sport is also MMA. MMA is fairly popular in that region, and the Saudis are looking at buying and merging the PFL and Bellator, the two top competitors to UFC. Oh.
And I think that makes sense. The one thing I meant to mention when we were talking about that too is like the other thing besides golf and football has been pro wrestling, obviously, with the WWE signing that large deal with Saudi to have at least one or two pay-per-views in Riyadh and Jeddah.
Right.
So like I think combat sports is probably the next avenue as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Floyd the Barber, compared to other positions, it seems like RBs get to their second contract at a way lower percentage, maybe the lowest percentage. That's articulately said, or well articulated is probably the better way to articulate such a thing. Because that's when you get paid in the NFL, is to get to that second contract. And the problem is that the running backs can't get there, and then the analytics community, when they do get there, says, well, they're going to fall off in 2 years, so they don't get paid, and it's not right. Fancy communist, Mbappe doesn't want to stay. Emma, he renewed his contract 2 years ago because they gave him a ton of money and power at PSG. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator, free Harbaugh. I know his views on abortion are Jim Harbaugh. I know his views on abortion are trash, and he's generally a very weird dude. But a 4-game suspension for buying or recruit a cheeseburger is ridiculous, especially when Urban Meyer got 3 games for covering up domestic violence by a member of his staff. Also, congratulations on 10K subs. We love to see it. Yeah, that's bullshit. The reasoning. I mean, I'm not going to cry for because I can't stand Jim Harbaugh. I think he's a
It's weird that
bad
these
guy,
recruiting
but it's bizarre.
It's weird that these recruiting violations are still like as persistent despite NIL sort of being the law of college athletics now, in the sense of like it's
well, because they're trying to like clamp down on I don't know any other way that players.
Yeah, I
can
guess
get
right.
paid.
I guess if they still can, by the letter of the law, penalize these people, they will.
Yeah. All right, guys. Oh wait, last I am of the day, final I am. Brandon from Kentucky. As a Tennessee fan, I was thrilled to see Arian back in Knoxville. Great interview. All right, well, you weren't one of the a-holes that were not nice to him. So, all right, guys, great episode. Perhaps our best yet.
Yes, thank you for over 10,000 subs, everyone. We
thank you,
cannot
guys.
thank you enough. And thank you again to Arian Foster for joining us on a momentous episode.
We will see you on Monday.
Bye-bye.